Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Small Talk. I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie.
Hello.
Together we are ThinkerThemer, and in this series we love to slow things down, make a little cup of tea, and talk about what's been going on in our life, in our world, whether that's board game related or not, and then of course talk about some board games. So
Yes.
first of all,
If we get a chance to, sometimes we don't.
sometimes
really.
we just ramble on and on.
We usually do get a chance to talk about board games.
Yeah, well, we definitely have 3 board games that we're going to talk about in detail,
Yes.
but we've also been quite busy because this month is Pride Month.
Yes.
So happy Pride
Pride
Month
Month
to everybody. It is a really important thing to celebrate. And
Yeah.
as part of the celebrations here in Melbourne, we went to the Victorian Pride Centre, which is a magnificent building that was constructed to provide a safe space to the community, but also for lots of community organisations and not-for-profits. So it's this amazing, like on one of our beachfront suburbs, this multi-million-dollar building that is just fantastic. And they had an exhibition opening as part of Pride Month that we went to, which we'll put some photos in. But it was called Printed Protest.
Yes, about the rallying and activism through the decades, really.
Yeah, so it was put on by an organisation called the Australian Queer Archives, and it was all like posters and printed medium that's been used from the 1970s until today to kind of fight for equality and our rights, and always done with a lot of determination and humour. So the posters were quite
There's always a lot
amusing.
of puns and a lot of which is interesting as a reflection of how do you get a message across when, particularly when, it's very confronting, or it's something that, can be met with a lot of aggression or a lot of resistance. It's like, well, sometimes humor is a way of softening that and your way in. But I was really impressed about the variety of, obviously, the types of art and how much of it is like, art is art. It's like, it still feels so impactful and cool, and it just like it's like magnetizing, like it just attracts the eye, and you're like, and the messages are still very relevant.
That's right. And the tone and the issues have changed so much over time, but there's still so much work to be done, but just in different areas. So that was really interesting to see. That was really happy that we went to see that. Actually, after the exhibition, we were like, we should grab some dinner nearby, and the only place nearby that we know and love is a little cheese deli that they only really serve wine and cheese. So we had cheese for dinner. We had fondue with a side of cheese platter.
It's called Milk the Cow, this place. Which is a really cute name for a cheesery, a fromagerie, I guess you would call it.
So yes, we had a lot of cheese, and it's very cold in Melbourne
at the moment
right now. Yes. So this morning in our house it was 9 degrees Celsius, which is quite cold. I mean, it's not like Canadian winter, like the middle of Europe, Christmas time, cold, but it's cold enough for me.
It's cold for us.
Very cold.
For our for our range.
Our threshold.
It feels exactly. Very, very cold.
So we're very rugged up, and we'll see how far we get into this video before we're freezing and need a top up of tea. So we had some mulled wine as well with our cheese.
Delightful.
So that was a delight.
That was really good.
And what else have we been up to this week? We went and saw Hamilton.
We did.
The musical.
Yes, the Melbourne production.
The Melbourne production.
Cast, I guess,
Yes, and it's been playing here for a little while, and if you watch the channel, you may or may not remember that in the middle of our very long, world's longest lockdown, I was talking about the fact that I'd really wanted to get tickets, and then I wasn't sure whether Melbourne was going to be open, whether it was all very uncertain at the time, whether it would actually be happening, and I just couldn't bring myself to buy tickets, and then they sold out, and then I was very sad. So Maggie very kindly bought me tickets because new shows had opened up.
Yeah, they extended it, I think it must be. We got tickets, great tickets.
We got great tickets.
I did have one, we did have great tickets. But then, when you're waiting, it's like, oh, there's no one sitting in front of you. And then the couple that comes and sits down, it's like, there's this sort of the girl who's like quite petite, and then her boyfriend
was probably the tallest person in the theater,
and
with
also
a big
had
hairdo.
like one of those like sort of boofy. I'm like, oh no! And so we swapped places so that Amy could see.
How nice is that? Maggie said, get up, swap with me. And I am shorter than Maggie, but also I had just been hanging out to see Hamilton, so that was very nice. And I kind of reluctantly dragged Maggie along to Hamilton a little bit, but you enjoyed it,
I did
and
enjoy
the
it.
cast was absolutely incredible.
Cast was very good. Yeah.
You know, we've
The
seen a lot of
ensemble
yeah,
as
we've
well,
seen a lot of musicals around the world, and it was just top notch. Actually, the actor who played Hamilton was the lead, was absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
Like really incredible.
Sounded a lot like Lin-Manuel.
Absolutely.
So that was it. I guess it kind of plays like all my concept of the musical is from either listening to the soundtrack or obviously the Disney Plus screening of it. So it was quite familiar then to have pretty much a exact pitch sort of voice.
Yeah, it was quite incredible. The gentleman that was sitting in front of me or just across from me, he must have been in his 70s, and not the big songs. So there's a lot of big songs in Hamilton that you may have even heard even if you haven't seen the musical. Yeah. But there's the kind of, I would say, the more obscure songs.
And a lot of the more ballads,
the ballads,
slower songs.
Yeah. And he was having the time of his life humming along with all of the like more obscure ballads. It was
cute.
Very sweet. Yeah. And I was enjoying that a lot, as well as enjoying the music myself.
Yeah, at first you're a little bit like, are you like who's singing? Like, and then it's like
humming?
It's like that's actually he's really into it.
He was his wife was laughing along,
really
and
sweet.
it was very cute.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we saw Hamilton. And we have some mailbox items. So we didn't do any last episode. So
no, because we didn't have some stuff with us.
Yeah, so we'll catch up a little bit
different
now.
Location, yeah.
But the first one I have here is this really cute bulldog, English bulldog, as you can see here. And this is from Melvin, who actually lives in Singapore and has sent us a postcard and a little game before, actually. Yes. But sent us this postcard, saw this postcard and thought you both would like it. Yes, I'm in London, saw plenty of board games, but yet to buy anything for myself. It's more of an eating trip with 3 of my gamer friends, and we ate a lot. Well, that sounds absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
I'm all about travel eating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's probably the main thing that we do when we are traveling.
Well, now board games.
That and board games.
Board games and food. That is a great trip. I wonder if you made it to UK Gamer Expo, which I know was on recently. So if you did, I'd love to hear about that. If you didn't, I'd love to hear more about the food. But thank you for thinking of us, Melvin.
What was the highlight? What was the highlight? Food highlight of the trip.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the postcard. We love receiving them.
Now, another little parcel that we received are some amazing, very excited, little stickers for my meeples in Obsession. Obsession is a game that I love, and a lot of people know. This is no secret that I love Obsession. So thank you so much, Joseph, for sending me this.
Joseph is actually in central Victoria, so not too far from us.
Yes, and so there's a couple of other kind of packs of stickers here as well, which is pretty cool for the game Village.
Which we actually don't own.
Have that one.
We don't own, but we hear a lot about it when people talk about worker placement.
So I can't wait to what do you call it? Like, zhuzh up my Obsession components.
Well, you're going to have to sit down with some tweezers, I think, and like get them nice and exact.
Arts and crafts time. So thank you so much for that. Very, very exciting.
When we place stickers on things, Maggie is much more, I would just say, fast. And I get quite paralyzed with the fear of putting them slightly off, because if I do, I know I'm just going to stare at them. I'm going to stare at that particular meeple that has the slightly off like sticker. So while I love stickers, I also am kind of scared of them. But if Maggie does it, then it's fine, because then
you can just blame me.
I can just blame Maggie, and I'd have
just
to blame
judge
myself.
me in secret or not so secret.
No, it doesn't bother me as much. It's when I've done it that I'm like, oh, why did I do that? And then that's all I can think about when I see them. Okay, I probably should work on that. Yeah. And the final thing we have is a few weeks ago, actually, as some of you might know, we got married over Easter. Yeah. And one of the Joey fam, Deb, sent us this most beautiful pop-up card. Look at this card.
Cool.
And I was actually messaging Deb because she'd asked if we'd received it, and we hadn't had a chance to film it because we were not at home. And so I said, yeah, we received it, and we got chatting about the card. And she was like, how wonderful it is that, there's cards like this, that the little cutout here is 2 women getting married. And she was saying, just not too long ago, that wouldn't have existed, actually. It would have been really hard to find a card like that, and you see more of it now. And as part of Pride Month, that makes me super happy as well. And
very awesome.
It's so lovely, and we've got our Mrs. and Mrs. mugs as well.
Yes.
So it's just really nice that the world has moved on a little bit. So thank you, Deb, for thinking of us and for thinking to send us a congratulations card.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so we always answer some IAQs. We have some good questions for this episode. If you do have a question for us, please make sure to drop it down in the comments below and use the acronym IAQ so that we can search and find it and make sure that we don't miss it.
Yeah.
But I have one here from Sis, who is a Joey, who actually says that they're coming to Australia again.
Exciting.
And apparently visiting the western half of our country. And do we have any recommendations? First of all, we haven't spent a lot of time over the other side of the country.
It's quite a trip.
It is quite a trip.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with how large Australia is, flying one of the directions is actually, because you're going with the wind, I believe, it's only 3.5 hours to get across, but I think it's 5 hours coming back. Or maybe the other way around.
Pretty similar to the width of the United States, I believe.
It's a very long trip. It's a long trip. So not a lot of people actually travel between, unless you've got family or things on or work or whatever it may be. But we have had the chance to visit Perth, which is the capital of Western Australia, a couple of times. We have a very good friend of ours has his family live down in the Margaret River region in Dunsborough.
Yeah,
and
beautiful. So lovely down there.
A piece of paradise. That there are some incredible beaches in Western Australia and amazing fishing as well. We've been out fishing.
Yes,
they get
fishing.
They have all types of fish that you wouldn't see over our side of Australia. Like it's quite amazing the difference in even the feel of the beaches is quite different. But it's a beautiful place.
I would say for me though, it's the quokkas. The quokkas, if you're not familiar with them, they are the cutest, friendliest, most naive for not their own good, like at their own peril almost, because they are in danger of extinction. But they are the cutest little animals that you will ever see.
They are adorable.
And they just have no fear of like people.
And it is a thing to get a selfie with a quokka.
They are just so adorable. And they're just in this one little island that you kind of, you sort of go there for the day usually, or sometimes for a few hours. Is that Rottnest?
Yeah. And we hired bikes actually and rode around. So it is a beautiful island, but they're definitely the star of the show.
They're just so adorable and so friendly. They just have, I'll see if I can find a photo that we can put on the screen. Yes,
absolutely. But make sure you do get there. In terms of other places in Western Australia, we have been up to Broome as well.
Oh, yes.
And Broome is just, I remember getting the small plane kind of in and looking out the window and looking down at just the pink and blue because of the red sand up there. It's incredible, the colours that come through on the beaches, and that is really, if you want to see like stunning. A true piece of Australia, then that region just has amazing waterfalls, water holes to swim in, beautiful just obviously red earth, and amazing like older Australian buildings, like really feels outback.
And it's very untouched, so there's a lot of very
but you have to be careful about what season you go in, because there's a long wet season. So the more north you go, the more tropical it is, and you need to kind of course, look into that. But I hope you have a wonderful time. And if you do end up over our side, the eastern coast, please drop us a line. We'd love to have a game. The next IAQ comes from Jeffrey, who asks if we have any Grail games that we wish we had. For Jeffrey, it's Shakespeare, which is interesting because I didn't know if that game was out of print, or maybe it's just really hard to find in certain locations. We actually do have a copy of Shakespeare.
I was looking at it the other day.
But we haven't played it in a long time. I do remember enjoying it at the time.
I
but it's
played
just
it solo. I know of a couple of people that have enjoyed playing it solo.
That's interesting.
Something that I should check back, look into it again.
So Grail games though. That was the question.
Well, not so much Grail in the sense of like I can't, it's like it's impossible to get them because it's like the ones that come to mind, they're very easy to get. It's just ones that I just haven't gotten yet because there's so many other things. It would be, and it's more to try, like Gloomhaven is one of those that I want to try.
Yes.
And Too Many Bones is the other one that I'm like, I'm just really intrigued by it. I haven't really been into historically, RPG, fantasy, that sort of stuff, but I've become more and more, like I've been warming up to the idea, and so I'm curious. So that they would be, again, not that they're impossible to find, it's just, they're like the ones on my mind. It's like, ooh.
I was just, while Maggie was talking, I was just looking up a game because I thought it was called Lord of the Rings, The Confrontation. I believe that's the one that people keep recommending to me by Rainer Knizia, which is actually a like head-to-head battle, and apparently I would enjoy it. And I've been told by multiple people, but it is a game that is, I believe, out of print. I think that's the one. Yeah, it's been likened to Stratego. And when we did a review of that,
so I will not enjoy it, it sounds like.
Lots of people recommended it, but it is out of print. And I always look for it, though. When we're at the flea market at Dice Tower West, I had a quick look around for it. But I think if a copy did become available, it probably wouldn't be at a flea market. People would know its value and want to sell it.
Never know.
You never know. You might stumble upon it. Isn't that the thrill of the chase? But yeah.
So no. I hear. I can't relate.
Aside from that, no, I think that at the moment we just have so many games that we often don't have time to think about the ones that, are there for collection purposes, or it's mostly just games that we want to backfill our knowledge of, and and we're waiting for someone else to teach us games that we wouldn't necessarily buy ourselves, and we've got so many anyway that it's just, and we're always buying new games. It's like playing some of those older classics, like playing more of the Stefan Feld games. It's really amazing when someone wants to teach us one of those older games. It's so good. And we're like, oh, this is why this game is so loved. So, thank you for the question, Jeffrey. Sorry, I don't have a better answer. But Jeffrey also says, thanks so much for doing the Small Talk series, and enjoy really listening to our conversation. So thank you so much, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Then we have Joker ES says, what board or video game reminds you most of childhood or evokes the feeling of childhood?
Ooh.
I have to say, we were driving the other day and we were talking about a game called Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I was like, Ludo? I've never played that. And then it's like, it's Ludo. It's like, oh, yeah, I played that to death. Like, I played that a lot.
And we were talking about that, the feeling of, when you would land on top of someone and it had the little popping dice in the center that was very like 80s and 90s.
I did not play with a copy of that, no.
You didn't have that one?
I had a very basic, just like, it's on the board and you have the little pawn that looks like the one on the cover. So it's just like that. And that was it. Yeah.
But I think it's the same concept though. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got to get all of your workers up and through and into your
and back
home
into
base.
Your thing.
Yeah. And at the end, you've got to get the exact number.
Otherwise you bounce back.
To get it
and
home.
I never knew like how much of that was actually accurate as the actual rules, or how much of it was like house ruled, and you kind of learn it from other people. And so
we learned it in completely different countries, and it was the same house rule that is rule. So it must be the rule. But can I say,
it's like Uno, there's like this whole like, are you allowed to like stack that? Like I remember hearing all this sort of different like, officially you can't. I have no idea.
When we were kids, though, that concept was so much fun. But now we would be like, well, this is entirely luck based, like getting into the thing at the end. And I love of course I did, but the landing on top of each other and then sending that person home. Like I
forgot about that.
You forgot that? If you landed on top of someone,
I vaguely remember
it sent them back to the start. That's
mean.
And that's why it's called Sorry in Australia.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway,
Ludo, isn't Ludo like the word Ludo? Because you hear in ludology,
game,
it's just like it's like it's like. So is this because it's like the Latin?
Game.
Yeah, it's the game called game. It's game.
What other games remind you of childhood?
The one that popped in my mind randomly is Operation, because it was so cool to have the gimmick of the meh, and then like you jump and get so startled. And because I remember playing it with my mom, who actually was a dentist, and so her her
Fine motor
skills
yeah.
were so good that she would thrash us, I would say, like destroy us in the game. Be like, oh, come on. She's like, well, if I let you in, then you'll never really improve or something, some excuse. But that's the one probably. Obviously, it's not one that I play anymore.
And I played a lot with my mum. Chess, of course, which I always talk about, but also knucklebones. Or jacks. So,
yes.
when you're throwing the things on top of your hand. And she was so good at that. So good.
Yeah.
But I remember also pick up sticks.
Yes. Yeah. Jacks, I think my mom was very good at it. But it was one of those, I think at the time that I was a kid, it was in those in-between stages where that wasn't a thing.
Yes.
But I remember at one point, like there was, we had one around and she sort of just dazzled me with like how quick she was at it. I was like, oh wow.
All of those nostalgic games. But I like that, there were these big games that were so mainstream popular that if you went to any house in the 90s, they had the same collection of games. And now, if you're into board games now, there's so much fragmentation. But what's cool about the fact that everybody had the same games is the collective memory of those games.
Yeah, exactly.
We had some friends over last night actually, and I don't know, we're talking about board games, and he's not really into board games, but he's like, oh, remember Nightmare with the VHS?
Oh, yeah, with the,
And I was like, actually, I think that was on Kickstarter recently. They brought out a new edition of that. But it's just funny, those memories that people have of like everyone huddling together to watch the scariest board game ever, Nightmare. And and Mousetrap. Everybody wanted to have a copy of that.
So cool, yeah.
And I never got to have my copy. Anyway, thank you so much for that question. I like reflecting on...
Wasn't it Life? Like the game of Life was like the game that you always wanted and you never actually got?
No, it was Mousetrap that I always wanted.
It was Mousetrap.
Yeah, I did like the game of Life though. Yeah. Much more fun than the actual game of Life.
I would disagree.
I'll
take actual Life any day.
String 808, another IAQ. I love how many IAQs you send us. Keep them coming. How do we feel about flavor text in rulebooks and on cards? Amy, do you completely ignore it?
Yeah.
But then get Maggie's blasphemous stares. And Maggie, do you find it super helpful for deepening your immersion into the game experience?
So let's start with you, because the first question was to you.
Oh.
Do you completely ignore it?
Mostly. I would say mostly. Unless it's really well integrated with the mechanics, in which case I do enjoy it.
Like, I'm going to put you on the spot. Name what comes to mind. That's one that has been really integrated into the...
Well, you have just really put me on the spot. But like, if I think about... I'm just going to mention Wingspan because everybody's thinking it. But if you think about the birds and how the associations with those birds are sometimes linked to the mechanics, that's the type of thing that I really enjoy. Or if it, what I love? Event cards.
You do love an event card.
I love an event card and I love the flavor text because it usually explains what's happening in the game. So you think about the game Unfair, for example. In Unfair, there's something that happens like, and for example, there's a ride malfunction, so everybody has to suffer, or so more visitors don't turn up to your park, or whatever it is. I love that connection of like what's happening to then something that you can't do in the game that round. Like that's my favorite type of flavor text.
I really, really enjoy flavor text. I find that I sometimes get self-conscious when if I'm like, oh, I want to read it and I want to read it out loud. But then it's like if there's people around the table that don't necessarily enjoy it, and particularly if it's too long, that's a problem. Because like I want it to just be a little bit that gives it, it immerses me a little bit more or gives context to what we're about to do. But if it's just like pages and pages and pages, like, no, that's too much.
And it has to be related, because I feel like sometimes even when you're reading flavor text, you're looking for the connection to what you're doing in the game. Because there have been games, and we talked recently about a 2-player game called Lawyer Up. And it had a lot of flavor text, but it wasn't always connected with the case that you were playing. And so it kind of it took you out of the game a little bit rather than deepening the experience of the game. So I think that has to be really nicely integrated.
Yeah.
And then it really adds something. However, rule books.
Yes.
I really struggle with a thematic explanation of a rule.
I love a thematic explanation because it makes it so much easier for me logically to be able to follow through. It's like, oh, of course, then it makes sense that I would do this so that I can do this, so that I can do this. And then
Yeah, I actually think that without the thematic explanation, Maggie struggles to learn the rules.
I do, yeah.
But once you know the
Because
why...
I have to fill in the blanks. I have to fill in the story blanks so that I can actually remember and make sense of it. And because I think the trickiest thing for me is to capture the flow. How's this game going to flow? And so if I'm reading a book and it's telling me a story and it's sort of thematically written, then it's like, oh, the story, it gives me the flow. Whereas if it's just like, you know, this happens and that happens, then I have to kind of on the spot create a logic and flow so that I can remember it.
Because you are better at understanding a concept, whereas I think I memorize a concept. And so I can learn a rule set just by memorizing the flow or the, you know, the stages, whereas you need to know, okay, no, bigger picture, what am I trying to achieve? Okay, then that makes sense why I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So a bit of a mixture there in terms of...
And I notice now it's almost like now that I've gotten faster at learning games, I've now almost got a default template story that I can plug in regardless of how well or not well the rule book has put one together. So it's almost like I've got my template and I'm just sort of looking for the components to fill in the blank and go, oh, okay, so that's the flow of this game. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for another great question. And I think we'll do one more question because I'm conscious we're going to be talking forever.
Oh, yes.
But Craig, who is a Joey, has asked us about pick up and deliver games. But hold on, actually, Craig sent us a photo recently, or maybe Karen sent us the photo. But what's really cool is that some of our community members have been meeting up wherever they are in the world. If they're traveling to different cities, they've been really communicating with each other and meeting up to play games. And that is so nice to see. Like, we never expected that by creating this community of gamers, you could facilitate friendships. And isn't that what gaming is all about?
So good. It's just,
Anyway,
heartwarming.
I love seeing that photo. So thank you, Karen and Craig, for sending that in, because it just really warmed my heart to see that. But anyway, back to the question. So apparently we don't normally like pick up and deliver games.
Not apparently, it's true. Yes, that's very true. It's fact.
How come? Craig says, how come? And what ones have you played? And Craig says, I don't have much experience with them. And to be honest, I would say neither do we. Because I think some of the best ones are sitting on my shelf waiting to be played. For example, I know Age of Steam is a pick up and deliver game, and I've been wanting to play that.
Not played it
we
yet.
have the game Bus, a Splotter game, which has been sitting there, and I wanted that game for so long, I got it, and now it's in shrink sitting on the shelf. But that is another game that I wanted to play for so long. And counter to what we usually say about pick up and deliver, we really enjoyed Maglev Metro.
We did, yes. And I was reflecting on this, and I think even though there is quite a lot of pick up and deliver, for me, I find that my mind is more preoccupied or more engaged with the board, your own personal board puzzle, and trying to figure out what you lock or unlock in terms of those color meeples or the robots and stuff. So it almost, to me, puzzle-wise, in terms of where the main focus of my attention is, it's more on that side than on the pick up and deliver, even though pick up and deliver is all you're doing the whole time.
I don't know what it is, but it's just, as a mechanic, it's not very interesting for me to go over there, get something, take it over there, and then how am I going to get back over there? And the route building kind of mechanic is not super interesting to me either. So it's kind of all of that world is not really interesting to me. But then I say that and then I play games that I really enjoy. But there have been, I think when it's a very simple implementation of that, I don't enjoy it very much. But a game that we absolutely adore is the Splotter game Roads and Boats. Because it's not just about you. Yes, you do have to carry things, pick them up and deliver them somewhere else. But I think the beauty of that game is the way that you upgrade your transport options. And it's so agonizing when you start with a donkey and you're carrying just one thing, one space. And then you build roads, and then you get roads and boats. And you improve your transport system, and it's a race. And you've got to optimize
elements in it. It's like this whole wall thing and the whole building of the roads. And
so you can block the other players from using your thing.
Destroying walls, putting up walls so that person can't even get their own stuff, and it's really not their own stuff, because then when you create, when you put a factory or something there,
everyone
the
can
goods
use the
that get
factory.
produced, they're for whoever can put them on their transport, it's theirs. And so you're like, but I put all the effort into building this, so you feel like that own. So it's like there's so much more going on than just like, I'm collecting this, I'm moving it over there and dumping it there.
And there are some simpler games that kind of strip back and are more linked to that core idea of taking something from A to B. Well, and I just find that less interesting as a concept.
Merchants of the Dark Road, like that was one where we were doing that, and you're kind of doing it in the sort of is it technically a roundel-ish sort of thing where you're kind of going around the town and then dropping the hitchhikers and the goods into the different areas. And so and for me, I think it's sort of, it feels like it's an element of, it kind of feels almost too straightforward,
too simple. And the calculating of how many steps going to take this turn versus next, I don't know, it's just not an interesting puzzle. But then other people, I'm sure, love that type of puzzle and the route building and all of that. So I don't know, Craig, I don't have an answer for you. It's just lower in the list. But thank you for asking, because we often do mention that in passing, and to be fair, there are a few games that have it that we absolutely adore. So I'm very open to it and looking forward to playing some of those ones that are still on our shelf. But anyway, we thought we'd add, even though this is going to run well over this episode.
What have we done?
I know. We thought we'd add a little segment in here called This Just In.
This Just In.
Because every week we are receiving games, whether that's things that we've backed, sometimes things for review, although most of the time it's just things that we've purchased. Sometimes we're in a retail store and we just can't help ourselves. So why don't we start there, and you can tell them about your recent purchase.
Oh, yes. So, well, it actually started because I have one of my dear friends is all of a sudden has gotten into bird watching. And I was like, well, his birthday was coming. I was like, well, this is an easy one. Got him Wingspan. And then I was sitting on it for a while. And then his birthday day came around and he's like, so excited. This is how I've been spoiled. And it turns out that his girlfriend got him Wingspan. He's not a board gamer like usually. And so I was
but everybody had the same idea.
No, we all had the same idea. I was like, no. But, great minds. So I can't be angry at her. Also, I love her as well. So it's all good. So I was like, oh, okay, pivot. So I thought, okay, well, I'll exchange it and get the expansions. And so got it from Tabletop Games.
Our friendly local game store.
Yes, awesome board game store in Burwood here in Melbourne. Turns out, when I went to bring it back, they didn't actually have the expansions in stock. So I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Let me look around and see what else I can find.
Let me see what else I could buy for my friend. But no, you didn't. You ended up buying something for yourself, didn't you?
This. So now or never. I haven't actually gotten into the Arzium trilogy yet. So obviously that's like Above and Below, Near and Far. And then this is the most recent. Now, it's so heavy. I love the artwork. Obviously, the big part of my venturing into more like thematically or narrative-driven games was Sleeping Gods. So again, like it's the whole, like Ryan Lockett has just been my gateway to this sort of story-led, highly, highly thematic games. I'm so excited about this one. I don't know if I'm making a mistake by going into like the third installment before I've done 1 and 2. I don't think so. I love spoilers anyway, so I'm quite happy to then go back and they're all technically standalone.
Yeah, I think they're all standalone.
It's like so overall, my understanding is that the story, it's sort of like the now or never. It's a return to that land, but it is. I don't think it's going to heavily rely on you having the background of that. And I think if I go back and play the others, it'll still make sense.
And Maggie will be playing it solo.
Main reason for this one was I always assumed that the other ones were also solo, like that you could play them solo. And I don't know if maybe there's expansions or if people or if you can just like
play two-handed.
But this is the only one that actually has officially a solo. So it's like, well, I'll start with this because Amy won't be joining me with this one. There's a lot of flavor text.
A lot of flavor text.
But I am so super excited.
She was so excited. She was beside herself all day after we picked that up. And actually, when we went into Tabletop Games, the woman that helped us, Marina, was so lovely. But we walked in and we had masks on. And as soon as we walked in, she said, I watch you on YouTube.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, that never happens. That never happens.
Never ever happens. Unless it's very much like in context. If we're like in a board game day and people know we're gonna be there, or like that sort of stuff. Like it's not like we don't get recognized.
We're not walking around getting recognized, even in board game stores. So so that was quite we were quite taken back by that, and we were wearing masks, so it was very good spotting. And then she was quite busy on the phones, and like there was lots of customer queries, so we were trying to do our exchange, and we picked up this game, then she had to take another phone call. But she actually emailed us afterwards and wrote such a lovely email about our content and how nice it was to meet us, and it was lovely to meet you too. And we're actually hopefully heading to a game day soon at Tabletop Games. So
because they actually have a gaming area, so and a library as well that you can buy. I think they have over 700 games or something like that. So exciting. But
so
super excited about this. So it's one of those games that like the rest of the day I would remember that it's like in the car, and I was like, oh, I can't wait. It's still in shrink though, so soon.
And just quickly, some other things that have come in. We recently received Dice Theme Park, which has just been delivered. I believe it was a few months late, but I mean, all Kickstarters are running quite late at the moment, so 4 months is not too bad really. But this is the sequel to Dice Hospital, but completely different mechanics. So I was quite excited to watch how that all works with all the previews that were there, and it's come with this little deluxe add-ons, which has got the monorails that run through the park that are actually miniatures, so that's pretty cool. Can't remember too much about it, but looking forward to getting stuck into it. You know, when games turn up and it's like, I forgot I bought that. Another one here is Root the Marauder expansion, and the plushie. So cute. Super cute. Now, Root is, as everyone knows, a game that's sitting on our shelf unplayed, and that's probably the main Grail game. It's a Grail game in terms of learning and playing
it, actually getting it to the table.
But the reason why it's taken us so long is because we just want to enjoy the experience with other people that are willing to learn the characters and the asymmetric factions, and we just haven't gotten into it. And it's before this, it wasn't ideal with a lower player count, like a 2-player count, unless you had the Clockwork expansion and everything. But apparently, the Marauder expansion is meant to make it much better for a 2-player experience or a lower player count experience. So I'm excited to finally get it to the table and get that, and add the plushie to the shelf because
it's so cute. It's so soft.
I know. Too. And then the final one is
let me see that I don't break
from
my back.
Renegade Games that I've seen a lot of people.
I don't even know how to do this.
You're just going to talk
One moment,
over me.
Please. Okay, sorry. Okay, you can go back.
I can keep talking now. My father's work, the Renegade game, which we backed on Kickstarter, and the reason why we backed this game was because it looked like more of a Euro game that was highly thematic, but also driven by an app experience. So more of a strong narrative within each of the campaigns, I suppose, that you play through. Haven't even opened it, still in shrink, because Renegade are yet to release the app. They actually got the game done quite quickly, and then they had all the games in storage, and then they decided to just send the games while we await the app. But I have seen lots of people posting photos of the little jars and all the little cogs and all the beautiful deluxe pieces. So I can't wait to unbox this. It looks beautiful, and I'm excited to play it when the app is finished in development. That's my father's work.
We have a lot of very heavy,
a lot of big games coming in at the moment.
But here we go.
Speaking of games,
let's get to some games that we have played.
Some games that we have played now that we're a long way into this video.
Oh boy.
Okay. So the first game is a little game. This one is called Crossing, and I had never heard of this game until we went to
never even seen it anyway.
Until we went to the board game barbecue day, and Mike, one of the board game barbecue team, was like, "If you have 5 minutes, I'd like to teach you a game, and I promise it won't take long." I think it was the end of the day, and we were just about to leave, and he's like, "No, we have to play a game of Crossing."
You're exhausted. You've been playing like all these like games. And you're like, okay, it has to be something that can't take too much brain power. I can't.
And so Crossing is a really cute game where all you're doing is pointing at mushrooms that are spread out on the table.
Mushrooms? I thought they were gems.
No, they're mushrooms that have gems sitting on them.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course they are. Yes.
So they are little tiles that have
we all
mushrooms on them. And on each of those mushrooms is going to be a number of colored gems. And what you're going to be doing each round is simultaneously, everyone around the table is going to point at a mushroom. So it's like 3, 2, 1, everybody points at a mushroom. Now, the key to this is if you point to the same mushroom as someone else, nobody gets those gems. If you're the only person pointing to a mushroom, you get to take those gems and put them into your player area. And now this is where it gets a little more aggressive. But during the rounds, when we say 3, 2, 1, if you don't want to point at a mushroom, instead you can point at someone else's collection of gems around the table. And if you, again, are the only person to point at their gems, you get to take all of them and add them to your player area. If you want to protect your gems, say you have started to collect quite a few and you're worried that someone's going to point at your player area and take your gems, instead of pointing at a mushroom or someone else's gems, you can cover your player area. And that means that if anyone's pointing at you, they can't take them, and you're going to be able to bank those gems and put them aside, and they are all going to count towards the end game scoring. However, if you choose to protect your gems, in the next round, you are out of the round. You don't get to point at anything. And so you have to time it really
carefully. You're busy taking your gems out the back and putting them in your storage. Yeah. That makes perfect thematic sense.
So you have to sit out the next round, which means you don't get to collect any more gems. And the scoring at the end of the game is super simple. The game ends when the bag of gems runs out. So it's just a finite amount of gems that are in the pouch that you're drawing and refilling. As you're refilling the mushrooms, if no one takes those gems, more get added, so they become more and more attractive. And at the end of the game, for every set of the 3 different colored gems you have, you're going to get 5 points. For the special translucent gems, you're going to get 2 points. And for every other leftover colored gem, you're going to just get 1 point. Super simple. You can teach this game in around 5 minutes. You can play
less than that. Yes, like a 2-second teach. Yeah.
I just taught you just then. And then you can also play it in like 10 minutes, and I've taken this to my work and they absolutely adored it. And it was just in the lunch break, everybody was eating lunch, and it was, there was probably a group of 10 people, but this is maximum 6 players.
6, yeah.
And so we had 6 people playing at any one time, but because the games are so fast, someone else would sub in and be like, I'm in this round.
It's just such silly fun.
It's silly. It's absolutely silly. It's super easy, but it's just one of those, either as a warm-up game or in a situation where someone just wants to play a really quick 10-minute game. This is your game.
Great icebreaker, I think, as well, because it's like you're just laughing and you're just like, there's no real skill in it, and
Yeah, and so it was a little hard to track down, actually. In Australia, there were no retailers that were stocking it, so I did have to buy it from Amazon US, which was the only place I could find it. But yeah, that is this little game, Crossing.
Our next game is probably one of the cutest, if not the cutest, most coziest little game
in our collection, I would say.
And the cozy games is one of the things that I'm really, really into at the moment, probably because it's really cold outside and it's like, I just want to, curl up with a good cozy game, like a good cozy book. So this is Creature Comforts by Roberta Taylor. And in Creature Comforts, we're all playing as different critter families in the forest, trying to deck out our home to have the most comfortable home ready for winter. So when we're going to be hibernating, locking ourselves away, just making sure that we've got all of the creature comforts in that house to have the best indoor winter ever. And so in this game, essentially what you're going to be doing is dice worker placement, but it's a very relaxed, very friendly type dice worker placement, because you have on the main board, you have the valley, which is where you have a lot of different resources. You're going to have the inn, which is where all the traveling visitors will come in. And so you'll have all these different characters that come in, and they're kind of like the event every single round. So they usually have something, a unique ability or thing that happens that anyone can partake in or affects everyone. But then they also have unique almost places or actions that you could take if you you decide to go there. Then there's the river, which is where you get stones or coin, and then you've got also all the I can't remember what it's called. It's like the owls. I don't know, it's like the owl shop.
Yeah, where you purchase comforts.
Yeah, where you actually can acquire the different comforts that you're going to eventually purchase and build. Because ultimately, it's all those comfort cards and also the little upgrades that you build where you kind of put your little cottage. All of that is going to have the points at the end. The way it actually plays out, it's a really interesting kind of worker placement one, because you're going to have 2 dice in your own color. Which you roll first, so you know as you look at the board, all the different places will have different requirements for the type of dice that you're going to put there, either a specific number, or it has to be combined. It needs to be this value or higher, or it needs to be 2 of the same kind, of the same number. And so you'll know those 2 dice. Then there's a group of collective dice that we're all going to be able to use, but before we roll those, we have our 4 workers that need to be allocated to all the different places. So you're you 2 of the values that you're going to be able to use, but the rest you're kind of hoping that you're going to be able to make those values with the collective dice that haven't been rolled yet. So when we're placing all our workers, we all do that at the same time. There's no limitation, so multiple people can go into the same place, which adds to that sort of sense of, it's more relaxed, and it's more like we're all just trying to create the best kind of comfiest home possible.
The difficulty in the puzzle is just hedging your bets against the village dice, because you have 2 of your own, 4 of the village dice. And so you have a sure thing in the 2.
Yes.
You're not sure what's going to come up in the 4. But if you hedge your bets well, you know that you're probably going to be able to achieve all of the things that you want to get done where your workers have been placed. Yeah, and of course there are more valuable dice worker placement spots that are going to have harder conditions to meet. So if it's going to provide you with more resources, it might say that you need to place 2 identical dice in this spot, and then you're really gambling on the fact that those village die might have a number that you need, or a pair if you need a pair.
But not all is lost. If you end up having a worker that's out there that didn't actually manage to be lucky enough to get a die that met their needs, they learn a lesson. And so they come back home, they've learned a lesson, and the lesson is actually these little tokens, which are essentially a plus or minus, which will allow you to, in subsequent turns, alter the value of a die to make sure that they kind of, which thematically makes perfect sense. They're wiser now, and they're like, okay, well, next time this is what I'll is what I'll do. So it's not a devastating blow if you don't get to
and then so actions. You can of course mitigate some of the dice rolls of course in future turns. There's also improvements that as Maggie mentioned you can save up for and use your resources, spend your resources on, and some of those are going to give you unique scoring conditions that interact with the comforts that you've built in your home. Some of them actually create new worker placement spots that you can use, but have slightly different rules to the regular worker placement spots. But all of the illustrations and the thematic integration in this game is really, really strong.
Really good.
If you look at the comfort cards, for example, they're, if you have a collection of musical instruments that go together, for example, or
toys and board games, or you have the rocking chair, and then there's like a cup of tea. So there's the synergies between different things. Is really nice.
You can be really waiting for a card to appear, and then when it comes out, you're just like hoping that the person before you doesn't take that card. But there are multiples of each of the cards as well, so it never feels like, oh, that was my one chance and I've just lost it. It is a really nice, relaxed game. It is quite interesting because the worker placement is done simultaneously, but then when you are allocating the 6 dice, you're actually passing the 4 communal dice around and taking all of your dice allocation turns at once. And for that reason, sometimes the game can feel a little bit long. I believe the designer has recognized that by putting in 2 options in the game. There is an 8-month or 8-round version of the game, and then there's a shorter option which is 6 months or 6 rounds. So you can, if you're playing with younger kids or if you just don't have time for a longer game, you can shorten the game up that way, and it just changes a little bit about the way the seasons are packed in there and things. I also really like that the seasons do change. So as the months go by, you're going to be working your way through the seasons. And in certain seasons, there are some resources that can't be harvested, just like in real life, although we freeze them so that you can get them in the supermarket year round.
Yeah, but not in the game.
Not in the game. Not in the game.
You
can't do that. If
unless you're just keeping them, in which case you can just store your resources.
Yes, you can. But you can't get fresh ones from the worker placement spots. And so that is a really interesting element to the game where you have to kind of plan a little bit ahead because you know which seasons you're not going to be able to get mushrooms, for example. So I really liked that little twist in the game.
Yeah.
I really do like the visitors as well that pass through the inn because they have some kind of rule that gives you new worker placement spots or that has something that's going to happen at the end of the round or immediately at the beginning of the round. So there's a lot of cute touches in this game that really immerse you in this cute, wonderful little world. And I really enjoy it. I enjoy it as well. And if someone is fairly new to worker placement game, this is a really nice place to start because it teaches people to collect resources, to think about the dice values, and then to save up for cards. You've got the cards in your hand, so you're trying to work towards something. But it's also just a really nice, relaxing game.
Yeah, and what I'll say, it is quite light. So in terms of like a gaming experience, it's not something that's going to make you go, oh, crunchy, what am I doing? So as Amy said, like the main part of the puzzle is kind of hedging your bets and going, oh, am I going to be able to make that worker a reality in terms of give them the dice that they need to do the thing. But the rest of the game, because there's no blocking each other, and it's a fairly low tension game, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm also going to say, so there's a solo mode, which is a very, very easy implementation of a solo mode. None of the rules really change. Ultimately, it's one of those, you're kind of playing the game, trying to beat your own score, but then also based on your score, not just based on your score, but also based on the areas that you specialized in, you end up getting your own kind of unique title by the end of the game, which is super cute.
It is really cute.
Yeah, and we were actually even doing that like in the multiplayer game based on like what people ended up doing. Oh, you are the, this and this and this. I'll put a little image of what the titles are.
I love that it's played in an identical way. There's no other rules that you need to learn to play solo.
Yeah, and again, very relaxing as an experience.
Yeah, but you don't often see that in a worker placement game. Usually there's some kind of AI or you need to change something about the board state. Yeah. So that's pretty cool, I think.
What I will say is, again, because it's so light, it's not. It wouldn't be my first choice myself because I tend to like a bit of a crunchier sort of thing as a solo experience. But again, like we've played this with people who are either new to board gaming or who really love the sort of cute components or are really attracted to the theme. So it's great for that. It does have a couple of expansions, and I think that was the thing that, like, if there were a couple of ways of making it harder, then I would probably want to like get it to the table more as a solo experience. There are a couple of expansions. One of them is from memory, I believe it's called Talents. So it's you kind of have unique abilities. So it's an extra, depending on the character that you pick. You start with your own kind of unique ability. And the other one, I think it's called Dreams Come True, or Dreams Do Come True. And it's essentially little secret objectives.
Yes.
So it's again additional ways of getting points. They don't necessarily make the game harder or crunchier. It's just adding a little bit more.
I will say it's simple, but it's really satisfying because there are synergies and things you're getting done.
Absolutely.
And when you're playing with other really good gamers, you're still trying to out synergize each other. And I really think that this game will have a spot in our collection because we often don't keep light games. But in this case, I feel like there's enough meat on the bones that to sit down and have a cup of tea and take in the artwork. I'll also say we've got the Kickstarter edition. So when we're showing you images, this is the more deluxe edition. It has wooden components for all the resources. They are absolutely adorable. And if you can find the Kickstarter edition, I highly suggest you try and seek that out because it's really cute.
And a lot of people have asked me, like, what's my favorite theme, or if I could have a game with any sort of thing. This is probably one of them. Like building the coziest little setup for winter is like, I love that. So I think theme-wise, art-wise, so many things that are so right with this game.
So that is Creature Comforts. And our last game that we're going to talk about today is a game called It's a Wonderful Kingdom. Now, this was a Kickstarter title. We did not back it on Kickstarter. Actually picked this one up in retail, so all the images we're going to show you are from the retail edition. A few people have asked us on the channel, they knew that we didn't back it, and they've said, have you had a chance to have a game of it? Because we did a full review of It's a Wonderful World, and we love It's a Wonderful World, and we have always spoken about how much we enjoy that game, and that was the reason we didn't back It's a Wonderful Kingdom, because we weren't sure whether we needed another game that was so similar.
And it already plays great at 2.
Yes, so that's the thing. With It's a Wonderful Kingdom, this is a 2-player only version of the game. And what's interesting though is the rule set is very similar in that the way that you're building up, in this case, your duchy or your kingdom realm area, is that you're going to be you're going to be placing cards in the same way that you were doing in It's a Wonderful World. And if you haven't played that game, basically, you are trying to get an engine up and running that's going to generate resources of different types. And those resources are then going to be used to build more cards that are going to help you generate more resources. And so you end up having to prioritize the cards that you build in order to try and get as much of an engine happening as quickly as possible. And there's also an element of producing more of each type of resource than your opponent. And in this game, that core premise is the same, but the way that you're drafting cards in this game is entirely different. So in It's a Wonderful World, you are playing with multiple people. Usually you are choosing cards from your hand, and then you're passing that hand of cards to the next player, and they're going to keep choosing. And you keep going around and around in a regular draft. In this game, you are forcing your opponent to choose between 2 options, cards that are on the left-hand side of the board and cards that are on the right-hand side of the board. You are going to be placing 2 cards down. You can put 2 on one side, or you can split the 2 cards, but you have to put 2 cards down, and then your opponent has to take all of the cards in one area. Now, the reason why you need to be super careful of those face down cards, and the reason why you might want to give them away to your opponent, is that some of those cards in the base version of this game are going to be calamity cards, and calamity cards are worth -4 victory points each at the end of the game. Disaster. That's a lot of negative victory points. So this whole game is about, how do I trick my opponent into taking a terrible card? Or how do I put a great card face down that maybe I want to keep and scare them off taking that card? Because the cards in my hand, there's going to be some that I want to keep myself.
Yeah.
But putting them out there for Maggie to choose from is risking losing that card. Yeah. And you also only have 2 trap tokens, so you need to make a choice of at what point of the game you are going to play those cards face down, or sorry, which part of the round. And then there are 3 modules that come in this game. So once you've kind of got your head around that mechanic, you can add in these different decks of awful cards.
Yeah.
And
there's a vermin, there's like all sorts of bad things that can happen to
giant.
You that actually then have cumulative effects.
Yeah, but what's really interesting is each player selects a different deck of awful cards, and they are going to have different rules associated with them. But because of the way it works, where you can hide a card and eventually you might be forced to take your own card, is that those awful cards can come back to you. You'll be forced to take those cards back. And so it's just a really interesting dynamic. And some of those cards do things like they freeze other cards in your tableau that you're now no longer able to build until you're able to use your army to defend off these other frost giants in this case. Or with the vermin set, you get rats, and then these rats start to multiply. And if you don't get rid of them, they just multiply, and they're worth negative victory points. And so there's it brings in an interesting element as to why you need to build up and collect soldier tokens in this game, because when you have the majority of resources,
it's called
supremacy, you're going to be able to eventually get these soldier tokens that are going to help you ward off these negative cards. So this game has far more interaction with your opponent, And it also has far more negative interactions.
Yes.
So that is something to be conscious of. You don't have to play with those modules. If you don't play with those decks of more difficult things to beat, there are 2 alternative modules. So you'll keep the calamity cards in, which is still a negative component, so it's always in there.
Yeah.
But then you can also add in asymmetric kind of player boards, and then like a quest as well. So, and the quest means that you actually have to achieve a certain number of objectives before you are eligible to win the game. If you don't do that, then you can't win. And so, yeah, I actually thought, top line thoughts of this game, it is more different to the base than what the rule set would suggest. So when I read the Kickstarter, it didn't sound different enough to me to warrant having both games in my collection. Now that I've played this, the feeling of the game is so different.
It's like at its core, you're still building the same thing and creating that same engine of resources, but it feels like so much of the game focus is actually on what they call the split and trap, when you're kind of bluffing and trying to get that person to take on those bad cards, particularly when it's bad cards that are going to then have a cumulative bad effect for them. I found that it's sort of like even the first time that we played it, like I could start to feel the tension creeping, going, oh, like it felt like the stakes were higher.
Yeah. And what was interesting is how you then develop strategies. Like the first game, you're like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Maybe I'll put a trap. But then you're like, oh, I get it. Yeah. I get it now.
Yeah.
I want to make one side look really attractive and maybe make you take a bad card.
Yeah. So I found that, like, for me, the element that I enjoy the most is actually just like that building up of your duchy or your kind of world. And so for me, this one, that even though I was really intrigued by how stressful and tense it felt, I don't actually enjoy that. Like, I don't like feeling like that.
You looked like you were enjoying it, though. You were pretty smug sometimes when I was forced to, when you got me.
Yeah, there's like that little moment of like, but then ultimately it's like, it's not, it doesn't feel good. And again, that's just like a personal player preference. And so for me, I think I would always, and again, I'm a multiplayer solitaire type person, so I would prefer, like if you give me the choice, I'm going to prefer It's a Wonderful World, because you kind of just get to focus on, the thing that you're building. You've got your campaigns with it, it's like, it's a lot more, peaceful in a way, even though it's not really technically peaceful, but the interaction doesn't feel as confronting as it does in this one.
Interestingly, I felt when I was playing this game, I really liked the twist, and I liked this game more than I expected to. And I'm a bit torn about whether to keep it or not, because I know Maggie will prefer to play It's a Wonderful World. But this game has enough of an interesting twist to me to warrant having both in your collection. It is aggressively mean, and that's something to be aware of, because not everybody likes that. And you're trying to bluff or make your opponent do something that they want to do, so not everyone's going to enjoy that. But I found it really intriguing. I just felt as though I lost control over my own game because you don't know what they're going to take. And so in It's a Wonderful World, the only risk to you of leaving a card that you want to take is that you're passing the hand of cards around. So you have to kind of prioritize what you really want to keep, or what you expect they won't keep when you pass it around. In this one, your cards are in your hand, but your ability to control whether that card is going to end up in your tableau is really difficult, and you actually can't even control the number of cards you're going to end up with. I mean, you can, but you put yourself at a lot of risk when you take lots of cards. So it's just it shifts the dynamic of the game enough, even though the mechanics sitting underneath it are quite similar. So I just thought a really interesting game, a really, really different in feeling.
Really felt like it went into that kind of almost like more chess strategy, trying to get into that other person's mind sort of thing. But then also, that like, do I want to get more cards, even though I know there's some bad stuff in there, or just because sometimes you can decide to take, if you have two of them, you can take nothing. So there can be nothing on one side and be like, I'll take nothing
instead of what might be on the other pile. But it does mean that the game lends itself more to kind of like tactics and changing a strategy on the fly rather than having a longer term strategy, because you just have less control and you kind of have to work with the hand that you're dealt by the end of the round. So interesting game. If it sounds like something you would enjoy, check it out. It's called It's a Wonderful Kingdom. And that is all of the games we have for you and all of the talking that we have for you for this episode. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hopefully we'll be back later this week with a preview that we're pretty excited about, so stay tuned for that. But otherwise, hope you're having a wonderful Monday. Please drop an IAQ in the comments below and we'll answer it for you in an upcoming episode. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.